Coming to you from the Endless Library, where every book is read and every spoiler discussed. Join us as we dig into the lives of fictional people who cannot defend themselves. This is the SideQuest Podcast.
Welcome back to the Pirates Preamble, Red Seas Under Red Skies, Part 5 on the SideQuest Book Club podcast. Today we have Spencer, like I did tell you, and then a surprise to me, even though I planned it, Casey and JT are back because past Jonathan forgot he did any of this, didn't even look at the calendar. They're both on there. And they showed up, which I'm super grateful for, but definitely unexpected because sometimes I get a little too swirly on the sea of brass. So, welcome, gentlemen.
Good to be here.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for having us.
So, every one of you has read this for the first time now.
That's
Yes.
correct.
That is correct.
Correct.
It's like I'm starting a cult. Don't tell my wife. This will be our secret.
For the greater good.
Let's do some quick rapid fire, or not rapid fire, just some quick thoughts. Like JT and Casey, you both actually blew through books 1 and 2 to be able to hit this show. So you guys can go first. How was your thoughts on book 1 and book 2? Let's do just some overviews, and then you can also mention whatever you're going to bring up later.
All right. So to start off with, the world building for this world is, I wouldn't say immaculate, but is very good. Very good. It's not quite Sanderson levels, but it is very well put together and well thought out. He even lays out some of the religion of the world. He lays out, oh yeah, there used to be this empire over here. There's elder glass that is indestructible. We have no clue who made it or how they managed to make it. And all of this is just background dressing. Basically, until it comes up in the story as something that they actually need to deal with, it will remain background dressing. And it's just good world building creative ideas that have been stapled onto there, as well as like the animals and creatures of the world. I love it all. And the story itself just does a great job of establishing character moments, really interesting plot threading, and building everything together to a single point. And that goes for both of the books.
What was one of your favorite favorite scenes in book 1, or lines, or both?
So I think my favorite scene in the book 1 was actually when they dressed up as Midnighters and broke into the Don's house, Don Salvara's, because as the Midnighters were introducing themselves to the guy, and he started taking off a bit, and he mentioned the mustache, I just went to myself, that's Locke. That's got to be Locke. That Locke and John, or Locke and one of the twins, because it is way too fast immediately following their Mr. Fairright scheme for the Midnighters to actually have caught up to him. This is them getting the guy in on it in order to trick him.
Very nice. Any favorite lines?
I just have to wait for John.
Mm-hmm. If you know, you know. It's a great line at the tail end of the book for book 1. Favorite scene, favorite line from book 2 here.
Favorite scene? There's a couple of good ones.
The one with Jabril.
Whose name you couldn't even remember.
Enough about Jabril.
Whose name you couldn't even remember last episode.
Nope.
He did a number on you, Slava.
I could do a cop out and say the what was it? The finale scene where all of the schemes are simultaneously imploding. But I think my favorite scene was actually him coming to terms with the fact that he can't backstab the pirate captain because it's just against the 13th. And actually deciding to come clean, because it's one of the first times that he is not just totally bullshitting and lying to someone.
True.
That's followed closely by the fact of that one twisty turned fogged area where we take on perspective of John. And I only realized when Locke said something and we aren't hearing his mental dialogue and what he's hearing, because the author purposely did that so you the reader don't know his true name.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Going through the Traveler's Gate.
Yep.
Nice. Very fun. One-liners? No?
Favorite line?
Spence, I'm going to ask you the same thing.
I think it's got to be the moment where he's like, "We were never coming after the vault, you dummy. What we wanted was in this room."
Exciting. JT, roll it.
First book was a masterpiece. It's essentially a heist movie in book form.
Yeah.
Which is to say, plan out a really ridiculous heist. Something goes wrong, adapt to it, and then triumph in the end anyways.
It cost, 3 friends' lives, but yeah, triumph.
Yeah, that is the balance of tragedy and triumph. They pulled off something ridiculous, lost some people along the way. That's the life of a thief, and it's harsh, but they didn't actually make it away with a lot of money, but they did make a pretty big death offering.
That is true. Let's see,
favorite scene. Yeah, the time when they dressed up as Midnighters is probably also my favorite. I did like we're going layers of scheme here. Yeah, the first time figuring out how far they take it. The only quote that I can remember, it's stuck in my mind, and it's not a good one, is, "Uh-oh, they pickled her," if you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yes. Yep. Oof. Yeah, gross.
But for the second book, and I'll share here, I've shared it with you before the show, I have a lot of critiques on the second book, because I think that if the first book was this perfect heist movie mix of tragedy and triumph, he essentially added too much tragedy and not enough triumph to the mix, and left me wanting something.
Let's get into that later in the episode. That's good.
Yeah. Favorite scene was definitely when they got immediately rescued after being tossed overboard in a tiny dinghy.
Is that a pun? We'll take it as a pun too. Tiny dinghy, showing off their tiny dinghies.
If you want. And then right when they got aboard and he's meeting with Drakasha, she says, "You would do well to consider me dead to flattery." And he says, "That's a pity, I'm so good at it."
That's a good one.
That's Locke for you.
That's it for me.
Yep.
Spencer.
I read book 1, I think a year ago or so. I did really enjoy that one, although it did kind of take me a little bit to get into it. It didn't hook me right away. By the time the deaths of Calo, Galdo, and Bug, when that was that, I was hooked, because I really enjoyed those characters, especially the twins. They were very, very funny, a lot of banter back and forth between them. And I thought it was I think it was a great loss to the book as a whole to have them killed off. So I was quite mad about that. But overall, though, I thought the story was really good and really enjoyed the ending of that book. This one, book 2, I didn't enjoy as much. It was still good. Still a lot of good, funny scenes. A lot of the heist was well, a lot of challenges for them to overcome, because like they plan something out and then it goes wrong like all the time. So, but I think for this one, I think it was a little harder for me personally to follow all of the different people that they were trying to foil in this one. It was almost too much to follow, because by the end, when all of their schemes were falling into place, I just kind of got lost on some of the things. So now that could be because I was also kind of rushing through the end of the book, trying to get it read before the podcast today. So overall, still enjoyed the book, and I think Locke and Jean's banter and their love for each other really kind of stood out to me in this book, and I really enjoyed that part of this book.
Favorite quotes?
Favorite quotes. Was it Thieves? Thieves always win, or Thieves prosper. I just kind of like that. I think because we always grew up hearing, or at least what I did, like cheaters never win. So it's just kind of like the antithesis of that. Exactly. But it's like that's something that we're taught, right? Because they're teaching us to be, good moral people, citizens.
Because we're a bunch of suckers.
Yeah.
And then you look at politics and then you realize, no.
Yeah, exactly. That and corporate
espionage. Oh, no.
Yep. Well, I mean, there is that. But anyway, but it was just kind of like that quote feels more true.
Mm-hmm.
Thieves win or whatever, because sure, they sometimes don't get away with it, but when they do, they also get a lot out of it.
I'd just like to mention the quote is thieves prosper. They don't win, because as you see a lot of the times, Laura and John lose. They lose hard,
That's true.
but they do end up prospering during all of that.
That is true. Thank you for the correction there. That does actually make more sense.
Nice. Slava, what were your favorite scenes and quotes?
I like the scene where he's fighting the Grey King in book 1. I remember being drawn into that scene. It was high action, very fast paced, and I enjoyed it a lot. My favorite quote from that book, and Jonathan knows, nice bird, asshole. Such a small, short line, but it was delivered well by the narrator and in the scene, true to Locke. In the second book, I kind of had a hard time choosing. I landed on the epilogue last episode, and we'll go with that. I just like the fact that Locke has grown so much. In an act of true selflessness, he gives Jean the anecdote. So I thought that was kind of cool. My favorite quote from this book, it's from a scene in, I think, chapter 4. And he's playing with, what's their face? The two women. And Locke tells the card dealer, card. The attendant passed him one, and he turned up the edge far enough to see what it was. The two of chalices, worth precisely one wet shit from a sick dog in the situation. He forced himself to smile. Bid up, he said, sliding the two markers forward. I'm feeling blessed. That little paragraph, it's more than one line, right? But
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Nice. My favorite scene from book 1 is actually in the beginning when Locke is an orphan and he's being adopted by the thief maker under whatever the hill is. And he's like, oh yeah, I took these purses from the guards. And he's like, you did what? Because he broke the secret piece. And he's like, yeah, and I took all this other stuff, and basically shakes his coat out. And he's like, I'm not, no, you're going to get me killed. No, not dealing with you. So that's kind of a couple scenes, but that's one of them. And then from quotes from book 1, I don't remember where this was said, but there's no freedom quite like the freedom of being constantly underestimated.
Love it.
As for book 2, favorite quote, I'm trying to remember where this was said. Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it might have been with Drakasha. You're too clever by half, Locke Lamora. Sometimes I think your death will be the only thing that can top your constantly inappropriate choice of targets.
Yeah, that was Drakasha.
Nice. And then as for scenes, I really love the Children of the Corn moment earlier on in the book where everyone is then possessed by the Bondsmagi.
Oh.
And they're just like, we're coming for you, Lamora. And they just kind of all come out of the darkness. In my mind, when I read that, their eyes are all just glowing. So those are my ones.
Yeah, that was a super, super creepy moment where this like 10-year-old girl is like, I can't remember the words, but basically, yeah, we're coming for you. You better watch out or whatever. And it's just like,
Yes.
Definitely would be a great scene in a movie to watch.
100%.
You gotta realize just how petty that they have to be to do something like that, because they would have to have gotten all the true names of all the people on that street, waited probably weeks for Locke Lamora to walk down there with John Tannen, and then pull all of this with probably like a dozen mages, each of whom costs like 100, regular person's wages for every hour they work. They could be making a ton of money elsewhere for weeks, but no, screw this guy in particular.
So I want to hear some speculations on what book 3 holds.
Honestly, I feel like book 3 is going to introduce at least one more main member of the party because they're missing a lot of key skills for their group. But when they ended the first book, I thought that the Sawbones character that was on the boat with them would end up part of the party, sort of the guy that stitches them back together after each heist goes wrong, and then he just never appears again. I feel like that they need a third character, A, to add skills to the party, and B, to add a bit more character interaction, because we've sort of gotten a not quite resolution, but a lot more of a fixed relationship between Locke and John for the second book. So adding a third character to the mix would put a lot more inter-character interactions and how they can go.
Man, if only he had another character that's been an implied part of their group for a long time, but it hasn't shown up once.
Yeah.
What funny if that would be a character that exists.
We coinkadink is what we call that.
Yeah, spooky, right?
Did you read book 3, JT? Is that what you're
No.
telling me?
No,
You
but
look
they've
it up,
been
though?
mentioning her the whole time. It's Sabetha.
There we go.
I mean, it's they've mentioned her since the beginning of the first book. I thought absolutely that he was going to somehow slip her into this book, and was kind of shocked when he did not. I really thought that she was going to show up as like a pirate captain in Prodigal Port.
That makes sense for Locke's continual growth, or his arc, for him to finally get over Sabetha.
Except he won't. I haven't read it, but I know it's not going to happen.
Have you guys ever heard of Lupin the Third?
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
I've never watched it.
Nope.
No? Anime mostly featuring a master thief and a couple other guys, but there's also one girl who is very, will they, won't they with the main character, the master thief. And most of the time she's screwing him over just constantly. But he always manages to pull her back in at the last second. So it reminds me of Sabetha, how he's constantly pining over, and everyone's like, dude, get over it.
Do you guys have any a Sabetha in your historical romance trounces? Spencer sounds like a yes.
No.
Just a funny question, I guess I was not expecting to hear in this podcast.
Well, also, we don't know much about Sabetha other than Locke really liked her. And
She's the white whale. That's all you need to know.
Something about a play, I think.
Jasmer Moncrane. Jasmer's the troubadour who leads he's the director of the play.
So yeah, I don't know much about her other than so she's somebody that he found unattainable, something that he couldn't talk his way into.
We also see her in, as you said, book 1, where she was doing the windows for thieving.
Do we?
Yep. She was also raised in the Thief Maker's Hill, whatever that was called.
Okay.
Briefly, and then she got adopted by Father Chains as well. So, but that didn't answer the question, gentlemen. Do you have a white whale in your past of lost love?
No.
No.
Nope.
Cool, just me. Great.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, tell us about her, Jonathan.
Well, you missed
Come
the
on,
episode. Slava and I
Sabetha.
the audience, if they've listened to episode, was it 4, 3, whatever we
The
talked about
last
yesterday.
one, where we talked about Australia's politics.
Yeah, Slava made a bad joke, and he's like, "Did you get it?" And so he said it again, and I was like, "Yeah, I got it. It just wasn't funny."
Oof.
She was an Australian woman that I chased across America for like 8 years. So
Oh, man.
Locke and I have a lot in common.
I remember those days, Jonathan.
Thanks, Slava.
You're welcome.
I think so, Jonathan. Going back to your question about what do you think is going to happen in the third book, I think we're going to need to see more to do with the Bondsmiths, because we just got that one scene from them
Wrong
in
book.
this book.
The
Huh?
Bondsmagi? You said
Bond-
Bondsmiths.
Got Cosmere on the brain. Oops. Bondsmages. So we. Oh dear.
And then Dalinar shows up and goes,
And just starts taking out everyone. No, so the Bondsmages, we just got that one scene with them where obviously they intimidate Jean and Locke through these other characters. And the whole book, I was waiting for something to happen with them. I was waiting for them to show up and foil their plans, and they never did. That to me that was kind of a plot point that didn't get brought back. So I imagine in book 3 there's going to have to be some sort of showdown with the Bondsmagi.
I would say that you don't see a confrontation at all, but you do see their grasping hands throughout the whole thing. They're practically shaking in their boots about getting chased by the Bondsmagi at the beginning of the book before the confrontation. And then it happens, and they're like, oh, great, they found us. But then the whole deal with the Archon is the fact that the Bondsmagi tipped him off about the two of them and said, hey, screw this guy in particular. Do whatever you want with him. And then they did the same thing to, what was it? Not the Archon, but the Priori.
The Priori.
And told that guy, hey, screw these guys in particular. And that's where the random assassins that started going after them came from.
Love those random assassins.
So even though they don't make, a second appearance physically in the book, their presence is felt throughout as the reason that they've been screwed so hard on their initial setup.
True. Which brings a good question as to Lynch's ability to foreshadow. Thoughts on that? You mentioned already that he has mentioned Sabetha now in 2 books, and she will be in book 3. You're correct there. You've also mentioned that he leads with some things here and there. I will also mention that Jasper Moncrane is mentioned here in book 2 as a historical moment when Jean and Locke are arguing, and that is one of the stages, pun intended, that is used in book 3. Is they review their adventure when they were with Jasper Moncrane for a heist. I have a favor to ask you. If you like what we're doing, the simplest way to support the show is to hit subscribe. In return, we'll keep leveling up, we'll listen to your feedback, and read authors that you suggest. And of course, we'll take side quests along the way.
So I remember in the first book especially, you have a lot of really good foreshadowing. First, you've got the death mark, which is kind of setting a lot of the theme, a lot of the purpose driving Locke throughout the book, at least in the beginning, especially at the beginning. But then it pulls it back at the very end and gives it to the Grey Ghost, the Grey King. I'll say that again. He gives the death mark to the Grey King. And secondly, you also have some of the foreshadowing in his heisting. I'm trying to recall what it was, but they teach you something at the very beginning. Oh, Wraithstone. That's it. They teach you about Wraithstone in the beginning, about gentling, and it seems like it's a red herring because they don't bring it up. It isn't something useful at all. And then at the very end of the book, it becomes, there's Wraithstone inside of these sculptures. And suddenly you go, oh, that's why Scott did that. He told us how that works so that we would know that this is a big deal. Which coincidentally is something I think he missed in the second book. Because if you remember, probably the biggest made up magical artifact in this book was the glowing orb that Ezra gets to burn to death by, which they seem to just magic the ship's bane, which they magic out of nowhere and just say, that's ship's bane. Here's what it does. And then she dies to it. And then it's over. That would, I think, in Scott's first book, have been something that was mentioned or used somehow at the very beginning. And then when it shows up again, oh crap, this is a problem.
He could have maybe done it during the scene when they were talking with the, the artificer lady? The one who pulled the trapdoor and sent Locke all the way down to the ground beneath him.
Sure.
where like she mentions, oh, and then there's this one material that burns through pretty much any lock if you put it against there. It'll even burn through water. And that could set that up. And then you'd have the scene where he met with his spy on the ship, Ugril, or whatever his name is, and said, the thing. He pulls out an orb, looks at it, and he's like, be very careful with that, and puts it away. That would immediately set up, this guy's got something really dangerous. And then when he pulls out the thing, Locke goes, oh crap, that's what that lady was talking about.
So this brings a question in terms of storytelling. Does everything have to be foreshadowed?
Not everything needs to be foreshadowed, but I would say pivotal items maybe need to be foreshadowed a little bit, just especially in heist movies where everything relies on things, chain of events getting set up beforehand so that everything can come to the thrilling conclusion. You do need to set up, hey, wasn't it interesting, this interaction with this thing? Well, here's why that happened. And he does it a lot throughout the book.
I'm assuming most of you have watched Death Note,
Oh, yeah.
the anime, and Code Geass,
Yes.
the anime.
I've seen Death Note, not the other.
Code Geass and Death Note to me were very similar in terms of how they made me feel. But after I had spent some time thinking about them, Code Geass is excellent, but Death Note is an actual masterpiece. And the reason is they both give you the same feeling, but Code Geass does so synthetically. It is forced kind of in there because Death Note will give you, here's all the things that you need to know to put all the pieces together, but we've jumbled it up so much that until we reveal it to you, you won't understand. But as soon as we do, you go, oh, look, that's cool. They put all that together and this is all like part of a plan, what have you. That was the first book. The second book was, oh, we're going to reveal something that you didn't have prior knowledge of just a couple of seconds ago that changes the equation. So there's no way you could have solved it until I revealed this to you. The same way in Code Geass, even the most critical points in the story, things like when they started killing all of the Japanese in the like special camp, special location part. He was talking with his half sister, and his powers go out of control just at that moment. They just happened to do it. Is that you couldn't know that was going to happen ahead of time. They just pulled that out to create the next conflict in the story. And that's how basically all of Code Geass works. But it feels so natural that you don't think about it. This was the exact same. Oh, here's Ship's Bane. You didn't know about that until this. Oh, here's this latent poison that you wouldn't have known that they could get tricked by until after Stragos revealed it. All of the same things. It's just a reveal just before, because it's more about the reveal of the next thing of the story rather than setting it up in the slow build and here's all the puzzle pieces you need to get it all together.
How about you, Spencer? What do you think?
I thought the Ship's Bane came out of nowhere. I mean, obviously it did, but it was a little bit jarring because all of a sudden you just have this weapon that can sink ships. And yeah, you've never heard about it before, and all of a sudden it's just this another obstacle that Locke and Jean and the other pirates have to overcome. To me, it almost felt a little too convenient to like, oh, hey, all of a sudden we have this ship sinking weapon that we can just throw in here. But at the same time, this other pirate captain, I can't remember, it's like a Russian name. Rodanov, yep. So he's the one who comes in and uses this. And in a way, as I'm thinking about it, it does kind of make sense that he needed this because Darkasha is probably one of the more feared pirates, right, on the sea. And so he needs to have a way to be able to beat her in a head-to-head fight. So it just, on the one hand, I see the use of it, but on the other hand, it almost just felt a little too convenient.
I was expecting Utgar to hold the kids at sword point as the edge that Radonov would need, because it was set up previously that she kept her kids on the boat with her. So I thought that was the hint.
I agree. I thought that would have made a lot more sense, actually, and it wouldn't have required her, or sorry, it wouldn't have required Scott to create an artifact that could sink a boat. In some ways, I think that he created that because he wanted to get rid of Radonov
And Ezra.
and needed something to do that.
I haven't thought about any of that until you guys brought it up. So I'm sitting here trying to process it, because for me, it seemed like a device that Lynch introduced in the manner that you're describing, but I was just more neutral about it. We need to get rid of Radonov. We need to create some tension here. And Ezra being gone is going to set in motion certain events. And so here's this thing that is a ship sinker, and it's briefly mentioned as dangerous when Radonov is talking to Udgar, and they says something like, hey, make sure that's, carefully guarded, or watch out for it. So you kind of know, okay, this thing is dangerous, and then it's revealed to be really dangerous. So I don't know. You guys are making me rethink or think deeper about it, because when I read it, I was, oh, cool. It's a big magical orb that burns everything, including boiling water. I don't know. Jonathan, what do you think about this?
I don't see Shipsbane as a Deus Ex Machina, and that's only because sometimes twists happen in stories. I think it would have been Deus Ex Machina if the Bondsmagi took over Radonov and had him blah, 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 something like that. Or there's a new magic that we didn't know about. Like, that feels a little more, all right, whatever. I don't disagree that perhaps Shipsbane was rushed, but that's why I posed the question, does everything need to be foreshadowed? Because, JT, you brought up some great examples. Sometimes stories just take turns. And that, I think, is one of the things, like, when I started Red Seas Under Red Skies, the first time I ever read it, I didn't think, I bet they're going to become pirates, or I bet they're going to get poisoned and forced into it's just like, oh, that seems in character enough and in line with the world and the story of what they're involved with, that makes sense. That seems plausible to me. But then there are other books, and I can't think of any off the top of my head, but where you're like, all right, you just like, I'm done writing this book. I've been working on it for 3 years. I don't want to work on it anymore. And this is a solution for the other book. Great. And then the author just moves on, right?
And King admits to doing this in The Stand. I remember watching an interview with him, and people were asking him, how did you write The Stand? It's like 1,200 pages. The question was something similar to that. And he said towards the end, he could not figure out what to do with a group of people, because we followed them throughout the book. They're at this place, and he's like, I don't know what to do with these people anymore. I got the main characters. I got some side characters to take care of. I have the story that I want to conclude, but there's these people, and I don't want them just to disappear from the story without giving them a resolution or something. And his way of fixing the problem was killing them all off at once. They all died at the same time. And I won't spoil it, in case you want to read The Stand, but they just all die. And so, to your point, Jonathan, authors sometimes just kill everybody off, or when they're done writing a certain character, a certain storyline, plot line, they'll just end it with something like maybe like a ship's bane, or in this case, a big old explosion.
Rocks fall, everyone dies.
Yeah. And there was an avalanche, and the series is over. But that's where I'm like at a quandary here, because Lynch is actually a really great foreshadower. And so I'm like, did he just rush the end of the book with like, hey, there's Shipsbane? Or was he just like, no, this seems like the correct choice, and it was totally sober-minded as an author?
I feel like he had to have rushed it because of what Casey brought up, being he had foreshadowed that she has her children on board, which she cares about a lot, and they were currently in a hold, and he was a traitor who she didn't know about. So he could have very easily have gotten to them and created a hostage situation. Instead, they have the ship's bane scene.
Wouldn't that be the hostage situation though? Is I'm going to drown your children?
Sort of, but it's all, they don't even really mention the children in that scene. A little bit, but
It was like just briefly, oh no, they're down
after
there.
after they dropped the ship's bane.
Yeah.
The much bigger. So I think the problem is, in my opinion, there were other things that could have been done in that situation that felt more logical and consistent with the story already developed. Whereas, so let's say another big twist from the first book was when Locke and John and Bug returned to their hideout after he had posed as the Grey King. And they discover, Calo and Galdo are dead, and then they see the hand with John's name on it. So there's a spell which had been foreshadowed slightly earlier in the book by the Falconer.
The things I could do with your true name.
Exactly. So there's, that's what's happening almost immediately, despite never having actually seen that spell before. And it makes sense with the, oh no, it's a massive double cross. They never meant to hold up their end of the deal anyways. So it feels like it's all kind of naturally coming together, versus it felt a little too unnatural because it felt just a little too much out of character for Utgar, who had been in her crew. We knew was a traitor going in because of the slight foreshadowing like 2 chapters before, but then had ample opportunity to screw things up beforehand, but never took the opportunity. And then suddenly, big orb takes down ship. It felt very caveman-esque. Like, why do something subtle and nice when just throwing in a big weapon will do?
What I found a little rushed in that scene is when he takes out the orb, everybody turns to him, all eyes are on him, and the doctor, for lack of a better term, I know there's an actual in-world term for it, but the ship's doctor shoots a bolt through his face and kills him, and that's why the orb is dropped. I thought there wasn't enough tension there, whether he was going to take the kids hostage, as JT mentioned, or he was going to go on a evil guy rant for 5 minutes explaining everything and revealing more and more things about what's going on in the background, or giving an insight into why Radanov was a douche. So for a slight moment, as I was listening to the book, that moment felt a little rushed. The rest of it, I'm still neutral about it, even after hearing you guys talk and thinking about it as you guys are talking about it. Still kind of neutral on it, but I wanted to bring this up since it's on point. The fact that he died so quickly after bringing out the orb felt rushed to me. I thought there could have been more fights. And
He technically didn't die when he got hit with the crossbow. John, because he got hit not in the face, but in the back, I thought. And then John comes over and just does the stab into him over and over and over.
You're absolutely right. It wasn't the face. It was like the back of a shoulder or whatever. Yeah, because she didn't see what he was holding. That's exactly right. And so she shoots him, hits him in the back, and that's how it gets dropped. But yes.
I feel like, especially, things could have done, even if they still used the ship's bane, he could have mentioned more, the kids down in the holds and like threatening them, like is describing how painful it'll be if they get caught in it, to try and force more emotion and force her to surrender. And then say the doctor, who had been like knocked down and dazed this entire time, finally gets up and shoots him, not knowing what's going on. Because that would instill more tension in the scene and a larger buildup before the jaw-dropping conclusion of, oh crap, it's activated, rather than just, haha, I have this, oh crap, it's activated.
How did it get activated? It just touching organic material?
No, he had it like it was a grenade almost. He had like some line that was in the thing that when he got shot, it dropped and fell off his finger. Otherwise, it'd be like completely suicidal to carry that thing at any time on the ship.
Take it out of the bag. Oh, I'm dead.
Oh boy.
And dead.
I mean, he's basically carrying around a stack of thermite.
Right.
Interesting. I see where you're coming from. It doesn't take away from the story for me, but I definitely think that you're right. He could have put a little more either build up with Utgar or a little more time at Port Protocol. I think really what I'm hearing from the feedback is the book should have been a touch longer to sort out these details.
I do agree.
Just a smidge.
Just a smidge. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, there was a point where I was getting near the end of the book, and I could tell just based on the length of, well, I listened to it on Audible, but I could tell by the length of like how much I had left, how much time, and like where we were at in the story at certain points. I'm like, there's not much time left, and I feel like we still have a whole lot of stuff yet that needs to be resolved. And so yeah, I agree. I think a little bit longer, a couple more chapters would have been nice to have to kind of maybe make things flow a little bit more smoothly at the end. Because to me, the end felt very, it just felt rushed. Like all the plot points coming together, or all the heist, or the double crosses and the cons taking place all kind of at the very end. I was just like, one thing after another, boom, boom, boom. It's like I kind of got lost at the end a little bit with all of the different cons.
He had 3 climactic showdowns, all at the very end. There was Romanov, there was the Archon, and there was the casino owner. All one after the other. Actually, it was Romanov, casino owner, Archon, in that order. And there was very little space to breathe in between any of that.
I also feel like they could have used the Bondsmagi more. That creepy scene was so good. And then I kind of figured it out as we were talking with Jonathan in the previous couple of episodes. And then, again, we read so many books for this podcast, sometimes certain key elements just slip out of my head. But the Bondsmagi being behind the Priori's assassination attempts of Locke, I wanted more interaction between the Bondsmagi and Locke, even though they just kept screwing with them with random merchants or people in the street going, "Hey, Locke Lamora, how you doing? We're still watching."
Or maybe like a shark or something during the ship scenes to say, "We're following you, Locke."
Yeah, a
Well, that would've been
talking shark with lasers on its head. Something. So,
Maybe not the lasers.
and I wanted more creepiness, honestly, because that first creepy scene was great. And if the Bondsmagi kept messing with Locke and John to throw them off, I think that would have been pretty cool. I mean, we probably get him in book 3. We do get him in book 3. I know. I read the summary. And I got some notes from Jonathan. Even if book 3 is all Bondsmagi from chapter 1 to 27, I wanted a little bit more of them here. Maybe that'll slow down the pacing because something goes awry, they have to react, they have to hide, or even if it's just a scene, more reminiscence maybe, but definitely more Bondsmagi messing with the characters, Locke and John, would have slowed down some of the pace. If there was, in between all the arcs of action, you get, a Bondsmagi poking the proverbial bear or whatever it is.
Quiet dread.
You guys bringing this up makes me spurs my creative side. You know what would be cool from an author? This is a bit of a deviation. Is if they had a series that was 7 books, but in every book, it's a different genre style. Because you're talking about adding creepiness, and it's like, well, that made me think of what if Locke and Jean had a horror book. Right? It's still a heist, but it has to be a horror genre, and then just thinking through this plus this genre, like heist plus this heist, and you're following the same characters the whole time. But sometimes, and the reason I think about this, sometimes life is like that. You can have seasons of life where it's just absolutely miserable, or traumatic or whatever. So anyway, that's my little deviation.
I mean, I could totally see that. You saying that now just popped into my head something like them trying to heist from the Bondsmagi themselves, and their tower or whatever, the place that they go, it's like a house of horrors almost. The creatures that they've bred, stalk the halls. The individuals that they torture are kept in the dungeon. They have to figure out how to escape or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I could totally see them trying to stumble their way through that.
Yeah.
What do you think of the Bondsmagi and the magic-ish system as far as we know it right now? Because I've been thinking about this, and I'm wondering if he misstepped in doing that scene in the second book, because it felt like similar to, if you've ever heard of J.K. Rowling's opinion on the killing spell, that it kind of ruins magic to a way, because you've got a spell that kills people. Why do you have all these other lesser spells when you can just cast gun?
Can you tell us which scene you're
Most
talking
powerful
about?
spell of all.
The scene at the very beginning where they're controlling everybody in the market, and you think, okay, well, what's the rule regarding this magic? Because is there a bondsmage, a bondsmage around the corner controlling all these people? Does each person need their own bondsmage? What are the rules? How does the magic work? Because if they're going to fight the Bondsmagi, which I believe they probably will
Mhm.
In the third book, then you go, well, how are they supposed to fight them if John's name is known and it's just the two of them versus these seemingly invincible? You had one that you were fighting that one time, and you managed to get the drop on them at the time because they didn't know your true name.
Yes.
That's a one-time thing. So now if you're going to fight all of them, how do you do that unless they're very accommodating?
You bring up an interesting point, because Jonathan and I talked very briefly about this in the previous episode when we discussed Stragos's line where he says we can fight the Bondsmagi with alchemy and engineering instead of magic, which brought up the question, well, how far does the magic go? Which is exactly what you're saying, JT. And we didn't really come to a conclusion.
I always pose questions mostly because we don't have all 7 books, and it's the scene where he's with Stragos in this artificial river, artificial jungle, and he's being like, "This, look at all these things. I've got 30 people over here, and the wind is going, and all I have to do is snap my finger, and it happens. What if we could have one person controlling all of it?" And he mentions that you can't fight Bondsmagi with Bonds magic. You have to fight him with artificing. And so I feel like, because Lynch is a good foreshadower, that feels like, hey, this is a one-liner about where I'm going to take this. They already have a feud with the Bondsmagi. Now, again, we don't have books 4, 5, 6, or 7. We don't even have novellas. So this could be not where he takes it. But to your point, JT, like, what is the system? The system is at least partly based on something that I would credit Ursula K. Le Guin with, which is true names. Her Earthsea series is a magic system based on knowing the true names of all things, which Name of the Wind, the Kingkiller Chronicles by Rothfuss, he also strongly takes part of her magic system where if you have some things or someone's true name, you control them completely.
I feel like, Casey, and correct me here, you probably know more than me, that actually has connections to like European folklore.
The Fae. It's a very Fae thing. If you tell a Fae your true name, you're giving them essentially you. Because Fae have weird, wacky rules on interactions. And I know a lot of this from, have you ever heard of the Dresden novels?
Heard of, never read.
So the Dresden novels has true names as well as one of the sources of power. In particular, well, the Harry Dresden himself has like a dozen middle names because his mom was a wizard and she wanted to give him the most complex true name possible so that people couldn't just get his first and last name and run with it. And so he's piecemealed out some of his true names to various demons and stuff through the story to get information. A very interesting set of things, and the Fae in particular are very dangerous if they have it, because they can basically enslave you, just like that.
The power of names too can even go back further to like ancient cultures where your name was your identity, like that's who you became. People always gave great meaning to their when they named their children. And so your name, I think in ancient times could kind of determine what like who you ended up being. In American culture, for whatever reason, we've kind of lost that. We just, and not everyone, but I think most of the time people just name their kids something because they like the name itself, like how it sounds. There's
Brayley, Shaley, Jaylee, Maylee.
exactly. There's no significant meaning as to like why they named or there's no significant meaning behind the name itself. It's just, oh, I like how this sounds. In stories, at least to American readers, it's like, oh, this is a different concept. Even though for probably most or rest of the world, it's actually very identifiable.
In those ancient times, the naming formula or conventions that people chose usually had religious overtones. In Egypt, it was not an easy task. So they had two formulas in ancient Egypt, a theophoric and an endophoric expression of names. And theophoric is a devotion to God or a deified figure, and endophoric is an expression or a statement about the individual. And sometimes they would combine them. So they took a lot of time and put in a lot of thought to names. So I think it's a modern American phenomena that names are just like, hey, that's just Billy or that's Spud. Even early Americans would name people after their fathers or grandfathers or that aunt that was the first one to come over on the Mayflower or did something extraordinary. There was more thought put into it, even if there was just like, oh, that's Aunt Julie. And she's named after Julie, what's-her-face, who did this great thing and brought a lot of fame and fortune to the family, or you name it. I think it's just something in the last maybe 50 years or in our generation where names have become virtually meaningless.
Part of that also gets contributed to the fact that our names are borrowed usually from other cultures. That became very common, very popular for names to be, especially from the Bible, because we're a heavily Christian culture, or at least were. And those being in usually Hebrew, we don't know the meaning of the name unless we look it up. So there's less kind of thought about, oh, does the name mean something? You know it means something, but nobody else is going to know that off the top of their heads. So like my name, for instance, is Jeremy. Jeremy comes from Jeremiah, and that means God exalts. Until I looked that up, I would have never have known. And my parents didn't name me thinking about that, because why would you?
Like my name means glory.
Vigilant.
So in the recent conflict with Ukraine and Russia, people in America and in the West have been saying the phrase Slava Ukraini, which means glory to Ukraine. And that's what my name means. But it's it's a shortened version of the long name. And the long name of me is roughly translated, and this is my own personal translation, eternal glory. So did my parents really think through why they were naming me that? Probably not. I think my dad just really liked the name because there's 3 different versions of it in Europe, in the Slavic European countries. There's one more common in Poland, one more common in Ukraine, and one that's distinctly Russian, and I have that one. And they all mean different things, but mine, again, by my amateur translation, means eternal glory. I guarantee you my dad didn't think about any religious aspects or...
This kid's going to raise hell. That's eternal glory.
Exactly.
How do you think your ego has fared?
That's a great question. Let's sit on that. I've also invited another guest who's a therapist. Welcome on.
Yeah, it's fairly well, because I never thought about it throughout my life. I just knew that was as a fact. And knowing that my parents didn't put any deep thought into naming me except maybe, oh, I like this name. And I was the Joseph of the family. My dad had me when he was a lot older, and I was his favorite. So maybe that had to do with something,
Mm,
but
that seems
who
plausible.
knows?
I want to direct the ship toward themes in the book. What themes did you guys catch? And what kind of rabble rousing do you want to get into with them here in the group? Whether you're posing a question or a stance, bring on the hot takes with themes.
Go ahead, Spencer. You haven't talked in a while.
One theme that I appreciated the author bringing into this book was friendship, the bond between Locke and Jean. So at the very beginning in the prologue, you had the scene where Jean appears to betray Locke by turning his weapon on Locke, and then then you start the book in chapter 1, and you're just like, what in the world? How is this going to get resolved? And then, yeah, for most of the book, that was just kind of sitting in the back of your head, like, when is Jean going to betray Locke? And then you finally get to the scene, and then he cuts again to the next chapter, and then he doesn't immediately pick back up, and you're just like, what is going on? And then finally, all it was Jean trying to play a trick, and eventually he shoots the two guys that were trying to kill them. But Locke didn't see the hand signal that Jean said he gave, and so he was just completely horrified for a few minutes while Jean was turning his weapon on him. But I just loved the scene afterwards where they just talk, and essentially they say, Jean's like, I would never betray you. That like they're both in this together, and there was plenty of other talking scenes where when Jean fell in love with Ezra, and Locke invited Ezra to join them on their adventures. But I liked the bonding between Jean and Locke in this book, and I thought that was developed really well.
That's something that Slava and I asked him. I want to say it was last episode. Like, do you think that Lynch is going to continue to put pressure on their relationship to the point that Jean breaks, or one of them breaks?
They did get pretty close during the whole confrontation on the boat, and in the backstory thing where Locke decided to get dead drunk because of the losses that they took in Camor. But John held through and pulled Locke out of the first, or of the second one, the backstory one, and in the other one, they both come to the conclusion, man, I was kind of an asshat during that conversation, and they both come to apologize. So the friendship has been strained, but I think it has been reinforced from that strain. Just how like iron sharpens iron is a phrase. The relationship has been forged in fire by this point. I don't think that they're going to break it up unless in the third book, the whole thing with the girl is going to just bring things to a head. Yes, Sabetha. She might drive a wedge if that's like something he has an intention to, because it's a point of contention between John and Locke.
You think Locke would let a woman get in the way of his friendship with Jean? How dare you?
Yes, he has made it clear that this is the girl. This is the one. I would do anything for this girl.
Well, let's not pretend that John wouldn't have done that as well, because I think that absolutely, if Ezra had survived, and she would have agreed to go with them, but eventually I think Locke would have wanted to come back on land and pull more heists. And I think Ezra would say, no, it was nice being here for a while, but I need to get back to sea. John would have gone with her. Absolutely. And I think Locke has grown to the point that he would have been okay with that.
Yeah. I think Jean would have gone under different, more noble pretenses, though. I agree with you completely in your assessment, but I think the reasons for Jean going would have been different than for Locke simping after Sabetha in the next book or whatever he does.
Yeah. Though I do think killing Ezra off might have been, I mean, technically that's the way the story goes, but in my mind, there's a scenario where she talked about how she was like the sixth daughter of a noble, where if she'd lived, they could have done like a heist against her own family
That
in
would
order
have
to
been
get
fun.
the birthright that she was never given.
What if Jean goes to marry one of those daughters or get with one of those daughters? I knew your
Heck yeah.
sister. She's dead.
Weird.
Yeah.
Maybe save that for the second date.
Oh, the second.
She burned alive, and I slit her throat. You want a date?
Well, the first, you got to ease them into it.
Right.
Yeah, this is the reason.
But yeah, other themes besides friendship, I would say that whole point of the 13th two main tenets is thieves prosper and the rich remember. And you do see it somewhat throughout each book. The issue, I would say, is that thieves don't seem to prosper so much right now because they've gotten screwed each time the heist is about to be finished, and they don't actually get any of the money. They got like pennies off of the artwork because it was actually fakes, just very convincing fakes in the second book. And in the first book, they had to sink the ship with all of the ill-gotten goods because it was for the death price that they would give out to their dead friends. So I'm wondering how he's going to include the first tenet of Thieves Prosper, actually, because the rich definitely remember. They got the Archon slapped in chains, and they looted, basically, the nobles of Comor until they really remember it.
I think an answer to that comment question that you posited, Casey, is another theme that kind of overarches everything they do. And this is briefly mentioned by Locke, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but something akin to life always seems to interfere with our meticulously planned schemes. And whether it's Sabetha, Chains' death, although we don't have the story of that, but then the stuff that happens in the first book after Chains dies and they have to do their own schemes, the death of all the team members. In this book, everything that happens, one thing after the other, it seems that they prosper because they get out alive and they're going on the next scheme. And even though they sink all that treasure, within a couple of years, they have enough money to bid up a hand, to use in-world language, to bid up, and that's enough to buy a house for some people. And Locke just loses that in order to continue playing that game to screw over the two ladies they were playing. So they kind of prosper, but not in the sense that like, oh, finally, this is the last job. We got all the money in the world. Now we can go retire in the countryside. They don't prosper that way for sure.
Which makes me think that the 13th god is messing with them in order to continue forcing them to be thieves. They talked about retiring after the big heist. Well, guess what? You didn't get any money from that. You're going to need to plan another heist. You good 13 thieves.
The crooked warden, the benefactor.
It's always another job.
Reminds me of, what is it? The Lady Luck. The idea of the Wheel of Fortune always turning. Oh yeah, you got this really good heist. Prepare for your life to suck.
Kind of like the monkey's paw. Every wish comes with a very, very dear consequence.
Oh yeah. What do you guys think about the Thieves Prosper? Rich remember.
Spencer, if you have any comments first, because I think my answer would lead straight into my the point that I mentioned at the beginning.
I don't really have too much to say on that. I did bring that up in the beginning, the line Thieves Prosper, just as a sort of, antithesis to kind of what we grew up, like cheaters never win. And it's interesting because we are taught that cheaters never win, but yet the reality seems to be that thieves prosper, or cheaters do actually win. But I guess, as far as, Locke and Jean getting the grand heist, getting the big payout. Sure, they didn't get the big payout, but they do manage to make more money or steal maybe more money than the average person in that world makes. So yeah, in that sense, yeah, they do prosper quite a bit. So I think that is just kind of the reality of our world too in general. Yeah, in some cases, people do cheat and steal and get away with it, and they prosper. I guess I don't really have anything else to really add to that reality or that statement.
Hearing you talk, Spencer, something that came to me, and this is not against you, but the phrase "cheaters never win" is so trite and almost meaningless, because yes, they do win. If you were going to convey the fact that cheating is bad, teach people what the honorable action would be in any given situation. And that gets back, I think, to ethics and all that stuff. But as you were talking, the thought that popped into my head is we often have these little sayings, call them truisms. But if you unpack them, they're just trite and cliche and banal, because the situation they're trying to address is much more complicated than that. And we don't have to have a PhD in philosophy to extrapolating truths from it or discuss it properly. But it has to be more than just a silly saying like that.
So
Anyway, parenthetical note over.
in terms of thinking about the ethics of it, and cheaters do prosper, and that's fine. But if you were to try to educate a culture, you'd want to use virtues, not values, because virtues are acted upon. And so I was reading, I think it's The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Benjamin Horowitz, who's like a VC, a venture capitalist. And he looked at Bushido, which is the culture in Japan, and how they lived out virtues. They didn't have values as a culture, they lived out virtues. And one of those things was, if you see something that is supposed to be done, you kind of just act on it. And if you don't, it's a dishonor to not just you, but your whole culture. And that gets into like collectivism versus individualism, because cheaters would think more individualistically rather than culturally and tribally, because they're like, well, it's just for me, so it doesn't matter. Whereas, the culture in Japan is more, well, we are a people, and it's a very we-centered ideal, and they act accordingly because that's also how they're raised. Whereas here in America, it's all very individualistic, where you just got to get yours at the cost of whatever. But now
Right.
we're seeing the ramifications of people not having friends, parents being checked into homes because their kids just don't care about them, people needing support from their community because they're having marital problems, and there's no one that they can rely on, no one that they trust. Just the degradation of society because we've gone too far individualistic and have lost any sort of collectivism that is actually useful and beneficial. Is that what we were going to talk about, Slava? Is, philosophy degree and just a couple ethical
Conundrums.
conundrums.
You dovetailed what I was going to say well. It's essentially what I was getting at.
Feenan.
All right. In that case, I'll go on to
Moving on.
something. Back to the
Beautiful
show.
transition.
Thanks, JT.
Weren't you going to say something about my point before it?
Kind of. So it leads into something that I had mentioned, which is tragedy and triumph. I intentionally used that alliteration. But in the first book, right, your big tragedy was the loss of Bug, Calo, and Galdo. And the triumph was pulling off the big heist, tricking the spider, killing the Grey King. There was a lot of big moments of, we got you. You didn't know it, but we got you. I'm revealing this now. I'm going to talk my way out of this. I'm going to get away scot-free. And then he sinks the ship with the money by tricking them. And he doesn't get the money, but they prevent it from falling back into the hands of the nobility. So in a way, it was stolen, just not available.
And it was provided as the death price for his friends.
Right.
That was foreshadowed earlier in the book he needed to do.
So there was a lot of tragedy, but not a lot of... there was a lot of tragedy, but there was also a lot of triumph, and it balanced out. In the second book, they stack so much garbage on John and Locke. They've got a poison, and then one of them ends up not being able to get an antidote for it at the very end. So you're left with one of them's gonna die, and then it turns out it's gonna be Locke because he gave John the antidote. So then, okay, how are they gonna slither out of this one in the next book? We'll see. So they got that. They had a pirate ship with this whole plan, and then that fell apart because what's his name? Caldrus keels
Caldrus
over and
dies.
dives. in the middle of the sea. And then they get their ship taken by the pirate, and Drakasha, the pirate, becomes their captain for a while. They fall into her service. Ezra meets John. They get a thing going, and then she dies. They steal from Requin, and then it turns out their stolen goods aren't worth anything because they are not worth much because they are replicas. So I think they stacked too much garbage on the main characters in this, but didn't give them enough triumph. And you can see this, I think, in the last couple of scenes with the Archon, where I don't think Lynch successfully gave us that payoff in beating the Archon. He started pretty well. They smacked the Archon in the head, but it feels like if you've ever played a video game where you get to the end of a character's quest line and they stop talking like them, and it's just the single repeated generic phrase. It felt like the Archon turned into that because he stopped being this larger than life villain who interrupts Locke whenever he's in one of his diatribes. Instead, he just starts begging, no, don't do this. I'll go mad. You think there's way more that you could do with this right now. Way more you could gloat in the face of the enemy who's poisoned you, that you'll die to now. And yet, they don't do that. Scott just puts them on the ship, and then they disappear.
What if this is part of what he's trying to communicate through the story? Is that even, maybe... So follow me for a second here. What if his whole 7-book series is on the phrase that Spencer mentioned, cheaters never prosper, or cheaters never win, and he's just making a point where he's like, thieves prosper, but they don't actually, because they go through suffering after suffering after suffering. They do have moments of jackpots and wins, but they actually, part of his writing is maybe to prove that this world is just full of suffering and you never actually win. You lose friends, you lose love, you lose the heist, and it wasn't meant to be an equilibrium for tragedy and triumph. And instead, his writing is just, no, the world sucks, and you can be really good and the world still sucks.
I mean, I guess I could see some of that if that was the point that he was trying to make. I don't know. I haven't read the third book to see if that trend continues. But it felt more like you're living a very dangerous life and eventually it catches up to you, was explained very thoroughly in the first one when 3 of their friends end up dead because of their own actions, or rather the consequences of their actions catching up to them finally. That felt like a natural, hey, you're running the thin line. Eventually you fall off. Whereas in the second one, like Jeremy was saying, it's less, hey, there's personal tragedies happening to you. Obviously, there's Ezra that happened, and then there's the poison, and they still have to deal with the Bondsmagi coming after them. I feel like if this is like an interim book, setting up the fact that they're on their last legs in the third one, for maybe they get their feet back under them, that could work well. I haven't read the third book yet. I don't know what happens. But as a self-contained story, it feels more like it's leading towards the darker side for the consequences of their actions without even giving them an up at the end of it being the real paintings. If those had been the real paintings, then the Thieves Prosper thing would still have functioned. They still would have accomplished the heist, even if they were still suffering the consequences of their actions throughout the whole thing, with the epilogue due to the fact that only one of them has a solution to the poison. So if it had been actually, the paintings, I think that would have made for a little bit more of a positive tragedy triumph that Jeremy was saying, because they would have accomplished the goal they'd set out for at the beginning, even if they'd suffered immensely due to it.
Yeah, that would be an interesting way to write a fantasy series, Jonathan, if your whole point was that cheaters don't actually, or thieves don't actually prosper. I think one reason why people read fantasy books is to escape reality, and they want something where the main character does overcome. He does get what he's looking. He does get the treasure he does get the girl or whatever. I think it would be a huge letdown at the end of the series if at the end of it, Locke and Jean never actually get any sort of treasure or, whatever they're trying to get. But at the same time, it could also be, maybe some sort of like, if that was the author's goal, just to, and sometimes authors will write stories as like a sort of commentary on modern culture. So he could be doing something like that, in which case, it definitely would make you think, because sometimes, life just doesn't go your way, and you can plan and you can scheme and you can save, you can do, all these things to make sure that your life is going to turn out the way that you want it to turn out. But at the end of the day, sometimes life is just going to throw you a curveball and you're not going to be ready for it. It's just going to smack you upside the head. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes in the third book. I also have not read the third. So, and if he's planning on doing more than just 3, it'll be interesting to see where he takes it. 7. So it'll just be interesting to see where he takes from here.
So the reason that I propose that perhaps he's making commentary is I don't have any, words of Scott to prove this or anything of that nature. It's just something that I'm wondering because of what we see in the story. But the reason that I came up with that as a premise is all of you have actually read or are in mid-series of a set of books that is all simply just a big pun. Cradle is Will White's take on From the Cradle to the Grave. The whole series. That's it. The whole thing is a big dad joke.
Yeah. He doesn't take much seriously, and he likes to be very funny with I think it fits a lot more in that story.
Oh, it does. He planned it that way from my understanding.
Yeah.
So the world is called Cradle. At the end of the series, they end up in this thing called the Reapers, from the cradle to the grave.
I think that the planet was actually called Grave too.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
There was a planet definitely called Grave.
Authors do that sometimes. Lewis is actually a genius in terms of his wasn't a pun, but authors are very, they're geniuses. So Lewis, in each of his books, in his 7-book series for the Chronicles of Narnia, each book is based on a planet in the solar system. Prince Caspian is based on Mars, and so the book is about war. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is Earth. Authors do really wacky things that when you find out about them, you're like, that fits really well into whatever the thing is. So Lynch hasn't mentioned any of these things. It was just a postulation.
The struggle which I have here is it feels completely out of character for the genre. It doesn't fit, because if the genre is a heist, then you expect that in the end, even if they've lost something, including people, that they at least make out like thieves. And at the end of this, they haven't made out like thieves. John especially doesn't make out with anybody anymore. And it's sort of like if you were to pick up a romance novel and you're reading it and there's love triangles and what have you, and you're thinking, oh great, it's exactly what I would expect for a romance novel to be. And in the end, the main character learns that the true romance was self-love, and that they decide to go live in a house with a bunch of cats.
Let it
And you
go.
think,
Let it go. Can't hold
sure.
it back
So you think
anymore.
maybe that was like a good lesson, because sometimes in life that happens to people. Some people aren't made for relationships. I get it. But it's not what I want to read. That's the problem. Yeah, maybe it's realistic, but it's not fun.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that anyone in the stories so far for these 2 books, we've seen any characters who've done something where they were above board, morally, right? Because in every character that I've seen, they're all backstabbing cheats and liars and thieves, regardless of their position, which leads me to conclude something that you've mentioned in Cradle, which is might makes right here in the series of the Lies of Locke Lamore.
In Cradle, or in the Chinese wuxia, ciencia genres at all, it's usually a direct might makes right. There are no pretends here of I'm going to trick you into doing this thing. It's I'm going to screw you over and you're going to take it, because if you don't, I'll pound your face in. And in this, it's more of a, what do you call it? Survival of the fittest. And part of being the fittest is being intelligent enough to see when you're being tricked. So I would take it more as a fool and his money are soon parted.
There it is. Another classic saying.
I can see the difference. I would propose that it fits the genre, though. If it's a series of heist books, Might Makes Right for a thief looks different than Might Makes Right for a strength-based, I'm stronger than you world.
It's basically the same. Yeah. It's a different feeling.
It's just the connotations of the word might
Yeah.
are more loaded towards physical strength or power than they are towards intelligence and
Cunning
skill.
and deception.
I think that Casey was actually right in that a lot of this book is set up for the next books, not in itself. Like, the point of this novel wasn't to get them anything at the end. The point was, here are a bunch of what you think are red herrings, but are actually set up for the next big thing in the third book or beyond. And I think there are several places where you see that, including, I don't remember the name of it. Jonathan, you'll have to help me. The big pit.
Oh, the Colosseum?
No.
No. The massive
Hole in the ground. The
hole in the
execution
ground.
hole.
Push people into it.
Yeah, which they mention, and Drakasha has some kind of connection to.
The Dark Abyss or something like that?
Oh, I thought you were... that sounds vaguely familiar, but while he's looking that up, I thought you were talking about when Locke goes to the basically rich person's...
The chess tournament thing with people.
With poor people, right, yeah.
Yeah, because they did have a conclusion for that when they
Yeah,
sacked
mid and
the
deep.
city.
The
Yeah.
mid and deep. Yep.
Which, it's a little
the pit
side
of-
quest within the show, right? Like, or the book.
Yeah, the pit of Hath Sin, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so the mid and deep, I think, is going to come back, because he mentioned it, but it wasn't really a big thing. They didn't use it.
Mhm.
It was just a location. I think it comes back later.
It might. It definitely doesn't in book 3, but there's supposed to be 4 more books, so.
So you've got Sabetha, a bunch of friendly pirates now, and Port Prodigal that he's set up to use. You've got a new talent in Locke and John's
Sailing.
pocket. Yeah, they can sail. So I think that there's a lot of things that he left there to set up for the next big job, and that will be a big thing. And that's why I think he didn't quite hit the mark on the heist or on, I think, the defeat of Stragos, especially because Requin just comes over and takes most of Stragos's power anyways. So Requin makes off like a bandit on this. He loses
Thieves
almost
prosper.
nothing, except that he wasn't the one that pulled off the heist, but he is a thief.
Correct. He runs a gambling den. Book 4 is called The Thorn of Emberlane, playing on book 1, where Locke is this persona of the Thorn of Camor. We don't know anything about book 4 besides the title.
Wasn't Emberlane the place that he pretended to be from as Master Fairright with the wine?
Oh yeah,
super expensive.
He pretends to be from a bunch of places, yeah. So who's to say what's going to happen there? One thing that he does mention in terms of like being the Thorn of Camor when he talks to people in a more honest way is that the Thorn of Camor was a group of people, which is why the Thorn of Camor felt big. So hearing the book title called The Thorn of Emberlane makes me question, are they getting another crew? I don't know. Because I think that you bring up a good point, Casey, in terms of like, you need some other people to be added into the mix to help expand the skill set and the story possibilities, right?
Yeah. I could see Sabetha when she shows up adding to that, but it feels like there's certain things that they have 2 archetypes right now. I would say they have the master planner and con man archetype in Locke. They have the muscle, the right-hand man archetype in John. It feels like they're missing the femme fatale, which is what Sabetha would fulfill probably. But they're also missing someone like an inventor, some guy who makes gadgets for them to help to fulfill the various heists that they're trying to, because so far they've offloaded the work of making these complicated things to people that they've hired, but that gives a paper trail that could be used to catch them in the future. So having someone just in the group who could invent or create these various things, a craftsman who could help them with the heists, either like locksmithing or something like that, that would be another archetype that could pop up that I would see being interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think the last archetype that I would think of is the, shall we say, the ghost, the guy who can sneak in anywhere, who isn't necessarily doing it via disguise and fast talking, but he's just like whisper in the hallways, not even touching any of the guards, but just getting past them all and getting to a vault.
Speaking of other abilities, other kind of characters, the one character we haven't brought up once, but is definitely going to show up again and was a big deal here, is Morane. I believe that was her name. The one that kills the alchemist right at the end, who slit the throats of the people in the prison to blame it on Locke and John, and is somehow connected to a shared employer master with Stragos. And yet we don't know anything about it. This is another part of the, I think he's setting up for something later. What do you think? Have you seen anything else in these first two books that suggest a larger plot going on, or if there's anything else that you've noticed?
The only thing that I can think of is Bondsmagi.
There is that, but there's also all the references to the ancient civilization that made Elderglass. And it might be like how you were saying was setting up Artifice as the way to beat Bondsmagi. Maybe the ancient civilization that created Elderglass wasn't using magic, but artifice to create the Elderglass. And so there's some sort of ancient creation system that they could figure out or steal.
Or maybe the old Theron Empire is still surviving somewhere.
Perhaps the 12 gods are still alive, as is the 13th.
Right. I mean, magic exists. Who's to say that the gods don't? Do you think, by the way, that John Tannen actually did get a vision from the Death Goddess when he did that whole thing in the first book where he went there as an acolyte? Because he does seem very good at dealing death.
I think that it's reasonable.
He might actually be a chosen of her.
I don't know who you're talking about. That person was Tavrin Callus.
Oh, you're right.
Different character.
I gotta keep up with these names, man.
That was difficult with the how many layers of deception were going on in this book. You kept hearing they would refer to Locke as Ravel. It's, oh, is it Ravel or Leo Canto?
Canto or Canto, yeah.
And then it would say Locke replies. Like, okay, you've got three names all referring to the same character in one sentence.
Yeah, I found that a little bit challenging to keep up with, all the different layers of deception. But one thing I just kind of wanted to mention, this doesn't really have much to do with the plot or anything in general, but I thought it was interesting how he had the pirates were their own sort of I don't know, group of people. They had their the pirate lords, if you will. It much reminded me of Pirates of the Caribbean, where there's like a pirate king and then you have the pirate lords. And so to me, I found that interesting when Zamira brought in the sort of council, if you will, of pirates to say, hey, I'm going to go take down Stragos. You guys don't have to do anything, but you just have to let me go do it. I don't know. I just thought it was kind of fascinating that they had their own sort of, I don't know, like they're not their own country by any means, but they like they have rules, they have an organization, if you will,
mutually agreed upon laws.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like they respected each other, like they wouldn't take out each other, except for when I can't remember his name, the Russian guy tries to take out Zamir at the end, but essentially, like for the most part, they had their own set of laws and things that they would agree upon, and it's like they agreed to, like, we'll take out, we'll pirate other ships, but not each other. So it just reminded me a lot of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. So I thought that was, like, I don't know if Scott, like, intentionally pulled from that, or if that's just, like, in history, if there were sort of these pirate lords that did that sort
Good
of
question.
thing.
Not sure. But this is another instance where I'm wondering if Lynch is simply throughout all of his books focusing on different types of thieves. Book 3 is about politicians.
The worst kind of thieves.
Oh man,
Pirates is the second book. The first book is like the thieves of your own city.
it was a gang basically. It was the mafia, the mafiosos.
Where it's like, it's might make right. Might.
Bop, 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 bop.
Cool.
Why don't thieves attack lawyers?
Maybe that's book 4. They're hired as lawyers. I think Locke could do it. Lawyers are just politicians who have less attention.
So why, JT? Because your joke was interrupted.
Propriety.
There was still something that I was confused at the conclusion. Why the heck did Morane kill her own boss? Like, I mean, obviously, but it was not super set up. I thought when she killed the people in the prison that she was doing that to make sure Locke and John got screwed over at the end because she didn't like them, not because she was working for someone else. And then she goes and kills her own boss in addition to the alchemist to prevent them from, which makes it more obvious that it was specifically those two. I'm thinking she was a deep agent from the Bondsmagi.
Could be. We don't know yet, from what I remember. Lynch is very good at foreshadowing. So to JT's point, it's like, well, there's a setup being made here that I think is purposefully in the background, and then also like something he can draw on later, but feels familiar when it is brought up.
I'm searching through the book right now, trying to find that scene. It was a short scene where they talked together, Archon and Morane. It was short, but they mentioned, essentially, I think it was the pivotal moment of the book in the sense that it's definitely the setup for the next book or something further even than that.
Well, he's looking for that. Any final thoughts, gentlemen, as we wind down here?
I'm definitely looking forward to the third book and whatever others come out afterwards. Looking for 4 more, I'm thinking, is the number.
There's 4 more. Thorn of Emberlane is written, as far as we know, and he also wrote 2 novellas that happen between books 3 and 4 of adventures that Locke and Jean go on that are not released yet. He also released a 2-part story in a magazine just 6 months ago.
Wow. All right. I'll have to keep a lookout for that. But I'm interested in seeing how all this goes, and particularly with the world building he's laid down, to see if he follows up on any of that or if it just gets used continuously as more set dressing.
Here's another thing. Maybe this is too big of a point to bring up at the end. Ezra and her death did not feel as impactful to me as Calo and Galdo. I understand why John was crushed by it, but it's one of those things where you don't care about it as much, even though you know the character that you do care about cares about it, because she didn't join them on any heists. She wasn't part of the group. If she had gone with them at some point and then died, then I would have felt actually some kind of real pain for that loss. As it was, oh, well, now John's sad, which makes me sad. There wasn't enough time to really make them a true item, so it didn't feel as crushing. And it felt like he was just repeating the same play that he did. Oh, no, mid-book, I need to get somebody that dies, but I can't kill off John or Locke, so I'm going to create a character. Once again, I'm thinking like, oh, it's all, he has a different thing in mind, and then he creates something to fulfill that. So maybe I'm looking at it from the wrong way, but...
Questions.
One thing that I thought was funny in the book was just how cats are a sign of good luck on pirate ships. And then I think in the end, doesn't Locke end up keeping a cat?
Yeah, the one he keeps telling, I'm not going to bond with you. I don't like you.
Yeah. It's just kind of like a trope on the classic, dad says we can't get a cat or a dog, and yet dad becomes best friends with the dog or cat.
Yeah.
Kind of, it felt like that in this, at the end of the book. I thought it just kind of funny little side note. Guys got to keep a cat around for good luck.
True.
SideQuest Cat podcast.
I did find it.
Oh, did you?
About a third of the way into the book. I have a PDF, so I'm not sure what.
That's fine. This bring us home, JT. Bring us home with this final cliffhanger.
So as they have sent them out, so this is before they've sent them out when they're training with the boats. Dragos is talking to Morane about trying to get this task underway. And then Morane says, "Then I may report to my masters that the plan is underway." And Stragos replies, "Yes, I suppose this commits us. You may do just that." Stragos eyed the shadowed shapes of the slender woman beside him and sighed, "Let them know that everything begins in a month or so. I hope for their sake they are ready for the consequences." Morane replies, "Nobody's ready for the consequences. It's going to mean more blood than anyone's seen in 200 years. All we can do is hope that by setting things off, we can ensure that others reap most of the trouble. By your leave, Archon, I'd like to go and compose my messages to them now." So she served a different master, and we knew that, but I didn't see any hints, and I don't think anybody else did, of who that could be. It might be the Bondsmagi.
At the moment, that makes the most sense to me.
So looking forward. I feel like it can't be because it's too obvious. I'll make that bet.
Maybe.
Sometimes the most obvious choice is the right one. Sometimes it isn't. This whole book series is about things being lies.
As they say, thieves prosper.
Thieves prosper and the rich remember.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for joining us again today, guys, on Red Seas Under Red Skies. Nope. Is that right? Did I say the book title right?
Red skies over red seas.
No.
Red Seas
say it
Under
right.
Red
You're all wrong.
Skies.
Red Seas Under Red Skies. Yeah. I'm just questioning myself. Did someone put poison in my drink?
No.
Only I have the antidote.
Great. There's a mutiny going on upstairs, so that's my cue to go because I have to sort it out. But it's always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us and reminding me that you were going to join us by showing up. So can't wait for the next one. Oh, and I think we got you guys back for another Cradle book here later this season, so it's going to be exciting.
All right.
Looking forward to it.
Me especially.
Slava, you want to do the outro?
I do. All right, guys. We'll see you next week on SideQuest.
I have a favor to ask you. If you like what we're doing, the simplest way to support the show is to hit subscribe. In return, we'll keep leveling up, we'll listen to your feedback, and read authors that you suggest. And of course, we'll take side quests along the way.